What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So you've already read the title. Today's video is a 4-year ownership update of my 2014 Nissan GTR. So I bought this R35 back in the beginning of 2018. I cannot believe 4 years later, here we are today. I still love the car. Obviously, I'm still owning the car. It's crazy. 4 years ago, I bought this thing. So in today's video, we're gonna talk a little bit about the driving I've done, the mods I've done, my future plans for this, a full review of what it's really been like. We're gonna kick it off with some questions from you guys. I posted on the community tab here on YouTube a picture of the day I bought this, and you guys asked me a few questions on it. So with that said, let's get right into these questions, and then we'll take the car for a spin and discuss the rest. So a lot of you asked me about track times, my 0 to 60 numbers, the quarter mile, things like that. I've only ever been on an 1/8 mile drag strip with this, and the time I did that, it was freezing cold out, spinning the tires so bad. I was getting about 7 seconds flat at over 100 miles per hour. But this summer, I'd really like to do some quarter mile times to where I actually have traction and can go a little bit faster and see what those numbers are. Because as this car sits, it's on flex fuel. I can do full E85. It's a full bolt-on car, no cats, bigger intakes, injectors, fuel system. So it's a full bolt-on E85 car. Should be making around 700 engine horsepower. So I'm curious to see too. Hopefully this summer I'll get some times done just because I haven't really been able to do that just yet. So another question, what more modifications do I want to do to the car? I don't really know. I love the way the car sits. I have the springs on it, the wheels I love. It's just a clean setup, kind of a sleeper because it's nothing crazy looking as far as the aesthetics, but it's a really clean setup. I love the way it looks. I love the power. So I don't really see much more mods. I think it's pretty set up the way it is. A lot of you have asked what cars are similar to the R35. Quite honestly, after driving hundreds of cars for YouTube review videos, I really haven't driven a car that is on par with what this thing offers. This is so mechanical, so fast, so unique. Nothing really is on the same level. I would say a baby version of this would be a new M4 Competition. That's a heck of a cool car, and you can even get a manual transmission in it. The muscle cars, maybe the new GT500, I would say that's pretty similar. It's kind of an American version of this with rear-wheel drive. Other than those two cars, not really much is on the level of one of these. It really is a unique car. Another question I had was any issues with it, reliability, things like that. This car, knock on the fender, has been bulletproof reliable. I have not had one single issue. I've never had a check engine light. I've never had anything happen to this car. It's been perfectly working. Most GTR owners don't really have any issues. Of course, some do. But me personally, my car has been perfectly reliable and I've never had an issue, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. Along with reliability, people ask about maintenance. So when I bought the car, so many people commented telling me that this thing would be a nightmare to maintain. I would go broke trying to maintain it. This is one of the easiest and cheapest cars to ever maintain. I do an annual oil change once a year. It costs about 40 bucks, 5 quarts of oil or so, and an oil filter, and I do it myself in less than an hour. And then at 35,000 miles, I had the transmission and the front and rear differential flushed. That was about $400. That's only due every 35,000. So when I hit 70,000, which is probably gonna be in another 4 years from now, I'll have that done again. But that's it, an annual oil change. I did the steering flush, which was like $15, and I put $110 brake pads on it 2 years ago. That is it. It is nothing special to maintain. I do it all on jack stands with basic hand tools. It does not take any skill. It's nothing to maintain. So next on the list, people asked about the cars leading to the GTR. Basically, where did I come from with this thing? So when I really decided that I was gonna buy a GTR at some point, it started with a 2012 Nissan 370Z. I traded in, after 4.5 years of owning the Genesis Coupe Turbo, I traded that in for the 2012 Z. That car, I took a $10,000 loan on it because I knew I was gonna have to build credit to be able to afford an expensive car like the GTR. So I took a $10,000 loan on the Z. 6 months later, I had built up enough credit to trade that in for the Nismo Z, the 2016 Nismo, which I love that thing. So that car, I had like a $20,000 loan. 11 months later, I built up enough credit to trade it in for this with a $44,000 loan. And that's kind of how I got to here. And obviously you guys know I'm looking at buying the new Z. Should be taking delivery of that in just a few more months. So it'd be kind of cool to have another Z back on the channel, which is where it all started with this car. It really started with the 370Z platform. And since then I've paid off the GTR. I paid that off last summer. So I own it outright, which is a pretty cool feeling to have the title to one of my dream cars. But that's kind of where I came from with getting the GTR. Next question, and this is a really good one. So 4 years later, has the GTR become boring? Do I still enjoy it? Does it still give me that, smile on my face? The crazy answer is absolutely. This car I was not expecting to own for this long. I figured in a few years I'd probably trade it for the next toy or something like that. This car, 4 years later, this thing ages so well. It gets better with age. Every modification I've done to it, it is more fun to drive, and just, it's a car I crave driving. I don't drive it necessarily every single day. I haven't driven it in 2 weeks, quite honestly, as of this moment right now. I've been so busy with other things, I just don't really always drive a certain car all the time. I was craving driving this car. I put 100 miles on it yesterday. Today, obviously, I'm gonna put some miles on it. And it's a car that every time I get behind the wheel, it's such a special feeling. And it's just so much fun. It really does put a smile on my face. And there's so many little quirks with it. This thing has so much character to it to where it doesn't get old. The only times it really gets old are if you have to daily drive it and drive in horrible traffic and things like that, just because it's not a refined car. It's pretty clunky. So it gets annoying to do that sort of thing. But when I don't have to do that with, I don't have to drive it all the time, it's always fun. It's always a smile. It's just, it's a wild card for real. So that's the answer to those questions. Let's hop in the GTR now and talk about some more. All right, so to get right into it, let's go over the driving that I've done with this car. So, bought this in the beginning of 2018, traded in my car for it, and this was my only car during the first year and a half of ownership. I had my motorcycle as well, which I do ride quite a bit. And that was it. So this was the car. This was the thing I had to use if it was raining out or something like that. And I did drive it a little over 5,000 miles the first year. I lived really close to where I worked. A year and a half after buying this, I added the 2020 Toyota Supra to the garage, and I owned that car for 2 years. I put 10,000 miles on the Supra. So if I didn't buy the Supra, this car would have another 10,000 miles on it. I'm currently at 44,600. I bought it with 24,000. So I put 20,000 miles on this in the 4 years that I've had it. And then after 2 years with the Supra, I sold the Supra, and the last 6 months now, I have just had this as my car. So I have averaged about 5,000 a year. The last year, I only put like 3,000 on this just because I drove the Supra so much, and with living with my brother who owns multiple cars, riding my motorcycle a lot, I don't really have to drive this all the time as my only car, getting press cars and things like that. Of course, I have other vehicles to be in. But nonetheless, at this point right now, this is my only car that I own, and then shortly I'm going to have the Z, and I'll be back to having 2 cars again. But the driving, so I used it for my normal daily going to work and back, things like that for quite a while, and then I really used the Supra as the daily for the time that I owned that car, and this was more of a car I drive on the weekends. If I really needed the extra space, I would take the GTR because it's pretty roomy. You can fit a lot more things in this. So I've kind of used it for everything. I've done the track, the drag strip, a lot of mountain road trips, which are my favorite things to do. I've used this for the groceries. I've had people in the back. I've had luggage in the trunk, long distance trips. Later this year, I'm driving 1,400 miles in a week in this car. That'll be a fun trip, which I'll be making a video on. So I'd say as far as ownership driving, I've probably done every single thing you could do with a GTR with my GTR. So it's been a very versatile car, and I have really enjoyed that aspect that you can have a car that destroys supercars, in a straight line and around a racetrack, and yet you can fit 4 people decently comfortable in it, load up the trunk with luggage, and actually use it as an ultimate grocery getter, travel car, whatever you want to do with it. So then, what are my favorite things about owning this car? I think my favorite thing is the fact that it is so versatile. You can literally do just anything. When I'm in comfort mode suspension, automatic, my exhaust is closed, so it's quieter. It's pretty normal, it's not that crazy of a car just to cruise in, aside from a little bit more drivetrain noise and clunking around slow speeds than normal cars. It's kind of a normal car. But then the fact that you can press a few buttons, I can turn my exhaust on, which makes it straight piped. I can put it over into manual mode and use these big paddles. I can sharpen up the transmission, the traction control, the suspension, and you give it a few downshifts. And now we're in a supercar. That was 20 to 80 in like 2 seconds. This car keeps you on your toes, and like I said, it doesn't get old. It's too much fun. I genuinely love the car. So with that said, let's move into what are my future plans with the GTR. Because when I first bought this, part of my plan when I bought the Red Z was to keep building credit to work towards my all-time dream car, which is a Lamborghini. The Lamborghini Gallardo, when I was in 4th grade, that car came out, and that instantly was my just dream car. I got a model car of it, and since that day, which is almost 20 years ago, I look at that model car every single day. I have that on my office. I look at that car every day, and I'm still working towards owning that car. So my initial plan was to figure out how to build credit and work my way up until I got to that car. So that is kind of the plan for the next car. I've gone back and forth if I were to sell the GTR or not, and it kind of depends on what I can afford and what I can justify, because I don't always drive that much since half the time I work from home. So I don't know if it's really justifiable to own 3 sports cars at the same time. I feel like my one expensive car and then the Z is going to be the perfect setup for me. So I think my plan will be in the next 3 years, I would think, I'll probably end up selling this for the Lamborghini, just because this car is worth a lot of money. I own it outright, and this is going to take care of half of the down payment on the Lambo, put a couple extra grand with that, and I'm going to have a really cheap loan, not a crazy payment, and it will be a very affordable car. If I kept this and then went for the Lambo, that's going to be a ton of money. We're talking in today's market like $140,000 car. That's a lot on a loan. I don't really know if I want that much debt. This car is worth over 80 grand today, so that's more than half of what I need. So I think the plan will end up being to trade this in for that, and then if I want to buy another GTR, down the road, I can pick one up. And I'm happy that with the new Z coming out, that's gonna fill that void of missing, the Nissan sports car, because this has become a really big staple car in our channel. But the 370Z was just as popular. You guys loved that. I still get comments about the 370. So I think with the new Z coming out, I'll be able to maintain that Nissan sports car, have a manual, it'll have a twin turbo like this car. So it's gonna have a lot of the fun factor that the GTR gives me, but be a much more affordable car to where I can free up funds and take this equity and put it towards the Lambo. So that's probably my plan. I think most likely that's gonna be what happens. My decisions kind of change, every few months depending on the market, how things are going to work in the world. So, nothing's really set in stone with what I'm going to do. But I think at that point, this car is going to be over 60,000 miles. It'll be getting close to 70,000. And that's probably the time to sell it as a car in general, because I want to get the most equity out of this car. I want to sell it for top dollar when the time comes. I want it to still be young enough in mileage to not have any issues. Like I said, it's been bulletproof reliable, never had an issue with the car. But I don't know, at 70,000 miles, are the clutches going to go out? I don't know. These seem to be pretty reliable. I see cars like this with 100,000 miles still kicking. But I don't want to get to the point where it becomes an old car where I'm replacing so many things, fixing so many things, and then spending $10,000 to $20,000 in repairs. I don't really foresee that happening, but I don't want to take that risk either when I have other cars I want to buy. So overall, the GTR really has been a rock solid car to own. More fun than I've ever found in any other car. I'm not even kidding. I've driven $500,000 Lamborghinis, I've driven Ferraris, I've driven a lot of different cars that cost a lot more than this, and I have yet to find anything as fun as this car. It really is something special to me. Has a lot of sentimental value too. There's adventures and people that I've met because of this car that I couldn't even put a price on how valuable those things are. It's crazy. You never think a car can do certain things for you, but I'll make more videos in the future on certain things. But this car has brought me some of the best people in my entire life, and absolutely this is the best purchase I have ever made, and I don't see another thing I've ever bought that's even remotely as valuable as this thing. best decision I've ever made. When I bought it, I lived in an apartment. This was kind of a stretch to get an approval for it because I was getting a loan for more than my actual income was at the time. I knew I could afford it because I budget really well, I save my money, and it was easy to afford. But it was hard getting an approval on something that was more than what I even made. But hands down, best decision ever. 4 years later, I have zero regrets whatsoever. It's been an awesome car to own, and if you're in the market for a GTR, get one. It really is something special. It's not for everybody though. Not everybody's going to enjoy such a clunky car, such a mechanical car. You don't accidentally buy one of these cars, and you certainly don't accidentally own one for 4 years. If you're going to buy one, if you end up liking it, you're going to keep it a long time because nothing else is like it. And for me, I can only sell this for my childhood dream car, the Lambo. I can't sell this for anything else. I don't really think I'm going to buy a newer GTR anytime soon because while it is better with the refinements, cooler looking inside and out, it's the same car fundamentally. And in today's market, it's well over 100 grand to get into a newer one. If I'm spending 110, 120 grand, I'm going to buy my Lambo for 130. So yeah, overall I think that's about it for my 4 years with the GTR. Like I said, it is the best car I've ever owned. Gosh. I mean, you just step on it, that's like 80 miles an hour in no time at all. It's so cool. It's so cool. I did have a few people ask me about the current market, is it worth buying one? That's a tough one. They've always held their value for sure, so I don't really think you're going to lose if you buy one. But they're going for more and more money every month, it seems, so get one now while you can because they just keep getting more expensive. And it'll be interesting if an R36 comes out. If one does come out and it's not as good, these are going to skyrocket in value. If the new one comes out and it's better, I feel like this will still hold value because if the new one's better, it's going to be a heck of a lot more expensive. So I don't think you can lose, and I don't think you can go wrong if you buy an R35. They're really good cars. I can't say enough good things about my ownership with this thing. I've been enjoying it so much, and when the time does come to sell it, that will be a heartbreaking day. I am probably going to cry when I do have to say goodbye to this car. But at the same time, in a few years from that point, I could probably afford to buy another one again, or maybe the Z will be done and I'll pick one up again. So it's a car I can totally buy again at some point, but in the next few years, I'm still going to enjoy it and keep it. And then when the time comes, I will do what my original plan was and trade my first dream car for my second dream car. But that is it, guys. 4 years with the Nissan GTR. I hope you guys have enjoyed the content. I know a lot of you are still here from the first day I uploaded a video on this car, so it's awesome to see people still watching the GTR content and the people who remember when I bought this and when I traded in the Nismo for it. I am really more excited about picking up another Z out of anything I'm going to be doing lately. I'm really excited for the new Z to join this and kind of get back to where I was with the old Z, but having a GTR too. So it'll be pretty sweet. So that is it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, stay tuned for plenty more content, and I will see you guys in the next video.